Tied to a dry tree trunk, with wounded wrists and a face covered in dust, Olivia Bennett struggled to breathe. Sweat trickled down her skin, mingling with blood, and the pain from the knots digging into her arms had become unbearable. In front of her, the masked man, known only as the Scarab, spun the blade of his machete between his fingers, his gaze as cold as the metal he held. "Want to save beasts? Then die for them," he whispered before disappearing into the trees. The silence that followed was worse than his threats. Olivia was alone, surrounded by the golden vastness and the distant roars of predators. Night was falling, and with it came fear. The wind carried the scent of death, mixed with the memory of everything she had lost: her father, her innocence, her peace. Before we continue, we want to know, where are you watching from today? Tell us in the comments. It'll be a pleasure to get to know you. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on this story. It really helps us bring more thrilling and intense narratives like this one. The sun beat mercilessly over the African savanna, scorching every inch of the red earth. Dust rose in small whirlwinds as Olivia Bennett drove her old Jeep forward, the tires groaning over stones and dry ground. She wasn't just another visitor to Savannah. Every step she took carried a mission few would dare to accept. She was there to protect what others came to destroy. Olivia remembered every detail of the guilt she carried in her chest. Her father, a cruel and stubborn hunter, had died during an illegal expedition, chasing prey that should never have been hunted. As a child, she used to hide behind trees, listening to the shouts and the crack of rifles, feeling a knot grow inside her. Since then, every animal she saved was an attempt at redemption. Every life preserved was a silent whisper to the father, who would never again hear her forgiveness. The wind dragged dust across the horizon, and Olivia gripped the steering wheel tighter, her heart pounding. She knew that here, among the endless golden plains and distant roars, every decision could be her last. Danger was everywhere. Poachers, traps hidden beneath the tall grass, and the untamed wildness that could devour both the strong and the weak. But she wouldn't back down. Protecting the defenseless wasn't a choice. It was a pact with her own conscience. And in the midst of that sea of grass and blazing heat, she saw, far in the distance, a majestic shadow dominating the horizon. A roar echoed, deep and commanding. Olivia clutched her chest, knowing her journey had just begun. On the horizon, between the waves of golden grass stirred by the wind, a figure appeared that made the entire savannah seem small by comparison. Leo, the lion with fiery mane, walked with the majesty of one who knew every inch of his territory. Every step made the ground tremble slightly. Every glance carried centuries of wisdom. To Olivia, he was more than just an animal. He was a living spirit of the savannah itself, the untamed force and beauty of nature. She watched him from afar, hidden behind a bush, recording his movements in her notebook and camera. She knew where he rested under the trees, how he led the pride during hunts, and, above all, she could read the subtle changes in his deep gaze. There was something almost human in the way Leo commanded his lionesses, cared for his cubs, as if every roar told a story that only Olivia could understand. And in that instant, as he lifted his head and sniffed the warm savannah wind, a shiver ran down her spine. She knew Leo would be more than a subject of study. He would be her mirror, her challenge, and somehow, her silent ally in the fight against those who saw life only as profit. Leo's roar echoed across the valley, filled with authority and strength, as if saying, "Here, life is mine, but justice is yet to be earned." Olivia pressed a notebook to her chest and took a deep breath. The journey was only beginning, and deep down, she knew that lion would change everything. Olivia carefully followed Leo's tracks, her boots sinking slightly into the dry savanna soil. Each step echoed through the vast silence, broken only by the rustle of tall grass and the distant cries of birds. She was focused, watching every detail, every scent of the wind, when suddenly a crack behind her made her entire body freeze. Before she could react, strong hands grabbed her from behind and shoved her against a dry trunk. A rough rope coiled tightly around her wrists, binding her with cruel precision. She tried to break free, but it was useless. A masked man emerged from the shadows, tall, menacing. His face was hidden by a black mask, and in his eyes there was only coldness and malice. Want to save beasts? Then die for them, he muttered before vanishing into the trees, leaving only the smell of gunpowder and fear in the air. Alone, Olivia fell to her knees, the sun scorching her skin, sweat dripping down her face, her heart pounding wildly. The distant roar of Leo seemed to mock her fragility, reminding her that the wild shows no mercy. The wind carried dust and the scent of human fear, mingled with the wild aroma of the savannah. She thought of her mother, of the friends she had left behind, and of all the things she still wanted to do. But fear was crushing. Every distant roar reminded her that death might be only a few feet away. Tears streamed silently down Olivia's face, and she convinced herself that this might be her last night. The sky began to darken, painted in orange and red, as if the savannah itself wept with her. Every minute felt like an eternity, and every sound of the night made her heart race faster. But deep within, between anguish and terror, a spark of hope refused to die. The dawn wind carried a strange tremor, almost imperceptible, but enough to make Olivia open her eyes wide. The ground beneath her seemed to vibrate, every pebble and twig trembling as if anticipating something greater. A deep roar tore through the silence of savannah, echoing like distant thunder, making her heart leap. From a horizon, shadows began to move, slowly, silently, but with an unmistakable presence. It was Leo, followed by his pride, approaching with an almost supernatural majesty. Olivia held her breath, fear mixing with disbelief. Each lion seemed to sense the air thick with panic, their every step measured, powerful, protective. She closed her eyes, ready for the end. But then she felt something different, the warm, rough touch of a tongue brushing her face. She opened her eyes and saw Leo kneeling before her, using his teeth only to chew through the ropes that bound her. Each bite was precise, delicate, almost conscious of not hurting her. When she was finally free, Olivia fell to her knees, trembling. The lion watched her with deep, intelligent eyes, filled with respect, as if knowing that this moment was more than a rescue. It was a silent pact between two species, a promise of loyalty that transcended fear and distrust. She touched Leo's golden mane, feeling the warmth of life pulsing beneath it. For the first time, Olivia understood that the wild wasn't just brute strength. It had soul, courage, compassion. And at that dawn, between the roar and the wind of savannah, she realized that sometimes nature can be more human than humanity itself. Olivia returned to the base exhausted, every muscle aching, her heart still racing from a night's ordeal. She sat on the small wooden porch, watching savannah awaken, the dawn painting the golden grass in soft hues. Everything looked peaceful, but the serenity was deceptive. Days later, tragedy struck without warning. One of the rangers found Leo's body, lying beside a cruel trap. His once fiery mane was stained with blood. The sight froze Olivia, as if the savannah had lost part of its soul. Every detail of the fallen lion pierced her like a blade. The half-closed eyes, the rigid posture, the strength that had turned to silence. When she noticed the symbol engraved on the arrow, the scarab, a wave of rage and despair surged through her. Her hands trembled, not with fear, but with contained fury. Every step of her mission to protect had been answered with cruelty. The loss was not just of an animal. It was a friend, a guardian, a spirit that had touched her deeply. Olivia fell to her knees in the tall grass, the wind sweeping through her hair, carrying the echoes of roars that now existed only in memory. She screamed, but the savannah did not answer, only the heavy silence and the whisper of the grass. Helplessness mixed with determination. She couldn't let Leo's death be in vain. A flame ignited in her chest, not of blind vengeance, but of justice. Every step from that moment on had a clear purpose. Illegal hunters would not triumph over the life she had sworn to protect. And in that painful instant, Olivia promised herself she would face any shadow, any threat, to honor the memory of the king she had learned to love. Anger burned in Olivia like the afternoon sun over Savannah. Every step she took along the dry trails felt heavier, filled with determination and contained fury. Leo's death would not go unanswered. Alone, ignoring her team's warnings, she followed the poacher's tracks, reading every sign the wilderness offered her. By dusk, she found their hideout, a makeshift cabin surrounded by dry logs and scattered weapons. With her camera steady in her hands, Olivia began documenting every piece of evidence, every sign of cruelty, every object that exposed their crimes. Each click was a silent step toward justice. But then, the air grew heavy and he appeared, the scarab. The masked man pointed a gun at her, his cold smile revealing the cruelty within. "You don't understand, woman. The wild belongs to the strong," he said, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. Olivia took a deep breath, feeling the fear, but she did not back down. "No, it belongs to the living," she replied, her voice steady, though trembling, filled with rage and pain. The air seemed to hold its breath, time slowing as their eyes locked. Every second was a deadly game, every heartbeat marked by the echo of Leo's roar in her memory. She knew this moment could be decisive. But something told her she wasn't alone, that the Savannah, the very force she had always respected, still guarded unseen allies. Before the scarab could pull the trigger, a roar split the air like thunder, echoing across the Savannah. Olivia froze, her eyes wide, as from the bush emerged Leo's lionesses, advancing with fury that seemed almost supernatural. Their steps were silent, but every muscle carried power and purpose, as if Leo's death had awakened an ancestral instinct for justice. The masked man backed away, but too late. The lionesses surrounded him, eyes glowing with ferocity no human could comprehend. In seconds, he was dragged to ground, his screams swallowed by the wind, lost in the collective roar of wild vengeance. Olivia stood motionless, breathing hard, her heart racing. The lionesses circled her, assessing every move. One of them, Leo's mate, approached slowly, locking eyes with Olivia for long seconds. There was respect there, recognition, perhaps even gratitude. Then, as if her mission were complete, she turned and vanished into the tall grass. Silence returned to the Savannah, but it was no longer the same. There was a sense of victory, but also reverence. Olivia took a deep breath, feeling Leo's presence in every echoing roar of memory. She understood then that the justice she sought did not come from human hands, but from nature itself, which never forgets those who dare to protect life. Days later, the scarab's body was found, and Olivia was hailed as a hero. But even among applause and recognition, she knew true justice hadn't been delivered by human hands. The Savannah had spoken for itself, and the power that had protected her and avenged Leo was something far greater than any law could contain. At sunset, Olivia walked to a small mound of earth, a symbolic grave for the lion who had changed her life. The sky was painted in shades of gold and orange, reflecting the color of a mane that now lived only in memory. She knelt, touching the soil gently, and whispered, "You saved me twice, my friend, first from death and then from myself." The wind rustled the tall grass, and in the distance a roar echoed, distant, powerful, eternal. Olivia smiled, feeling for the first time that the line between human and wild could disappear. That courage, loyalty, and compassion know no species. That true strength lies not in domination, but in protection. In that moment, she understood that every life matters, that every act of care echoes through the world in ways we cannot always see, that empathy is the deepest form of strength, and that respect for life is the purest redemption of all. And so, beneath the vast sky of Savannah, Olivia remained in silence, listening to the echo of roars, feeling Leo's presence, and knowing that justice, courage, and loyalty can be born even in the most unlikely of places.